Greetings, friends, and welcome to a special bonus edition of How to Wrestling, the world's first wrestling podcast detailing how to wrestling, how to get into wrestling, how to understand wrestling, and goodness knows, maybe finally to know what the names of these shows are, because Joe keeps getting confused.
You're tweeting about them wrong.
I mean, I did have a little titter when he said, I hope you're all ready for Smackdown review, and it was SummerSlam.
Shut up.
I was like, that's very funny, but then I was like, oh no, seriously, you do need to change that, because that is wrong.
Yeah, we got a couple of people going, hang on, I thought it was the other one. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
sorry.
And it's always dreadfully confusing when one of the first shows you watched was SummerSlam, which you kept referring to, one of the first shows you watched was Smackdown, and thinking Brock Lesnar was on SmackDown, and so many fans would be like, Brock Lesnar would never appear on SmackDown, Joe. Okay, it's a B show. It's not an important event. He's not contracted to be.
Yeah.
It's been difficult, a real difficult one for you, knowing the names of the shows.
That's why we're doing this now. I mean, I've had to request it. It's getting to the point where it's just silly that I don't know what they are.
What is it about the names of the shows that maybe makes it different, or makes it difficult, I should say?
Well, there's so many of them, and they're all called really similar things. Like, oh, come on, right, okay, no one's allowed to judge me for getting Smackdown and Summerslam and all those other things like that confused.
Well, you have to at least admit that SummerSlam obviously has to be the context specific. You wouldn't have a weekly show called SummerSlam.
Okay, probably not.
You know?
But, and also there's like the difference between the pay-per-views and the like the weekly shows. The weekly shows.
Yeah. Well, the idea of this one is that hopefully we're going to go through and know what the weekly shows are, and then we'll quickly zip through what the main pay-per-views are in the yearly schedule for WWE. These obviously all appear on the WWE Network, all these pay-per-views.
Right.
And I think we might as well just talk about them so you know what generally happens. There's generally a theme as to what happens at certain shows, and obviously some shows are bigger than other ones. I mean, obviously you know that WrestleMania is...
Is that the biggest one?
Yeah, WrestleMania is the biggest one. It was at one point referred to as being the granddaddy of them all, until Vince McMahon sent a memo around saying that he didn't like the term granddaddy of them all because he thought it made it sound old. Now, this may or may not have been around the time Vince McMahon actually became a shoot granddad himself.
Oh, man.
Granddad, what the hell? Shut up!
It's like those parents who hate being called mum and dad. Makes them feel old, says just call me by my first name.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the commentators are there like, oh, welcome to the granddaddy of them all, and amidst a sea of 80,000 people you see Vince McMahon waving his hand back and forth going, cut that out, stop. I'm not 70, I'm 65. Yeah, that's it. So, the background of this one, I mean, do you know like why there are pay-per-views, or do you even know what a pay-per-view is? I mean, why it's even called pay-per-view?
Okay, it's something that I think you've told me this before, and it just didn't it doesn't sink in for some reason. Okay, pay-per-views.
Yeah.
They aren't shown on TV, or they are. One of them is and the other one isn't.
Okay, well, if you break up the word... Pay-per-view.
So I'm guessing they're not on TV.
No, it's a viewing which you would...
You have to subscribe or something?
Some would say it's almost like a viewing that you have to pay each time you view it. So pay-per-view.
So where do you pay to view the shows?
You see, it's quite funny because I think this is the real interesting one for you, because obviously you've just become a fan when the network is just like a thing and it's accepted. Because, you know, we pay monthly for an undisclosed fee, the WWE Network.
We don't pay per view.
We don't pay per view, we pay per month. It's a PPM now, but there are events on that which wrestling fans still refer to as being pay-per-views, because back when I was a kid growing up, I mean, some of the pay-per-views were given away for free in the UK, but in America...
And when you say given away for free, you mean they were on TV?
Yeah, they're on like Sky Sports or whatever,
okay.
So a premium package, or sometimes Channel 4 if we were very lucky. But in America, you would have to pay for every one of these shows. So it's a monthly show. It's actually a big show. Usually the storylines on TV are building to this monthly event. And if you want to watch this event, you would have to like ring up, you know, a number.
You have to ring up a number.
Well, this is back in the day before internet. You have to ring them up and say, yeah, I want to buy Fastlane or Valentine's Day Massacre or whatever it was, and you would pay $40 or $50 or whatever it was. And then you have a special pay-per-view channel on your on your box office Sky thing or whatever, and you would get the show, and then you could watch it then.
And so how long has that been running until then? Is that still going on now?
The funny thing is with the network, where it now, for an undisclosed fee, you get all those shows included with this monthly fee.
Yeah.
That no longer seems like relevant, because you're paying for around 4 or 5 months the cost of the network to watch one show. And you still can do that. But there's maybe a few less pay-per-view providers than there were before. And obviously the majority of the people now are watching them via the network. So WWE originally would have gotten a lot of its money through this pay-per-view model, which is monthly someone's going to pay, a premium to watch this big show, and that's how they would make the main amount of their money. Now the main way they make their money is monthly subscriptions to the network. So it's a complete shift in the business model, but we're still using these old terms. We're still saying it's a pay-per-view, even though it's not a pay-per-view. They're not meant to be building towards a show at the end of the month you want to watch. They're going to make you want to subscribe to the network. That's what their goal is now.
I see. So when you were watching wrestling in your boarding school with your group of boyfriends...
Friends who are boys.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
It's not gay, it's wrestling, okay?
Well, either way. Does that mean that you all chipped together and bought the pay-per-view?
I mean, I say this now as someone who grew up. I mean, I painted you a very bleak picture there. Like, and we had to ring up a number and pay. There was a real sweetheart deal that was cut for those of us in the UK, which was that if you had Sky, you got usually 10 of the 12 pay-per-views for free.
Oh.
Now, as years went on, that number completely fluctuated. But when height of the Attitude Era, when it was cool, when I was watching, you got all of them for free. Then a few years later than that, it was you paid for 2, but they were the 2 shit ones, and you still got WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble. Then mid to late 2000s, it became, right, you had to pay for WrestleMania, the Royal Rumble, but you got all the other ones free. And then it just became, you had to pay for all of them. But in America, you had to pay for all of them always.
Wow.
But the concession was in America, if you're watching a pay-per-view live, you have to stay up until 7 p.m. at night. In fucking England and Ireland, we had to stay up until 1 a.m. to start watching a 3-hour show. So, yeah, I'm not paying for that privilege, okay? You should be thankful as a fan I'm doing that,
Yeah.
But do you know, how... what else pay-per-view was used for in sports or things like that?
I imagine it's used generally in sports for big shows, big matches.
Yeah,
probably
boxing.
even football or something.
It doesn't. I don't think they really do it for football that much. I mean, football is still mostly shown free. I mean, I think there are some matches which you have to be part of a paid service for.
Yeah.
But big boxing matches, big MMA matches, all of that would still mainly be on pay-per-view.
Right.
But what's interesting is that one of the reasons why, remember we talked about Vince originally in our first episode, how he managed to take over almost completely and kind of revolutionize wrestling and make a lot more money out of it. But one of the reasons he was able to do that was that he knew this thing was coming called pay-per-view. And Vince McMahon invested heavily in pay-per-view in the early 80s, before it was even a thing.
Right.
And he was adamant that people would pay to watch the show, and he was very right. The first WrestleMania, for instance, there was no pay-per-view. It didn't exist as a concept. But in the first WrestleMania, Vince McMahon hired out loads of cinemas, and they showed it live, so people would pay to go to the cinema and watch the wrestling live. Now, in some ways it was a disaster, but the actual theory behind it of people paying for the special wrestling event that you've built up to with free TV, that was still there, So, and that's one of the reasons Vince McMahon was considered to be one of the heavyweights of pay-per-views. It was boxing and wrestling in the 80s, because they would get hundreds of thousands of people would buy these pay-per-views. A few WrestleManias have had over 1 million pay-per-view buys worldwide.
Wow.
The WrestleMania with Donald Trump is the record. It's 1.3 million buys.
There was a WrestleMania with Donald Trump.
Oh, yes. Save that for another... I think a how-to Trump closer to the Republican presidential nomination maybe might be a good one. But Trump has been involved in wrestling a few times. Of course, you know about that, about Hulk Hogan pleading with him.
Well, I just thought it was a bit random. I thought it was just a name out of the air. I didn't realise he was involved.
Donald Trump, I don't know, anyone do.
Yeah, anyone.
But yeah, pay-per-views, the idea has always been, and I'm saying this in kind of this is how it's meant to be. It's meant to be every week on the weekly shows, you're building towards the pay-per-view. The storyline should either culminate at the pay-per-view or have a kind of a big moment of development at the pay-per-view. Now, that doesn't always happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might just do like a lazy ending on a pay-per-view, or you don't get the conclusion to the storyline, or
Right.
so they don't necessarily serve the purpose that they're meant to. But there's 12 pay-per-views in a year, once a month. Okay, we'll go through the main ones shortly, but just to nail down, Monday Night Raw, Smackdown, okay, NXT, main event, those shows. Those are the weekly shows.
Right.
Which are shown on either TV or the network. Those aren't pay-per-views.
Okay. Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
Smackdown. When's that one then?
Smackdown's on Thursday nights.
Okay.
But Smackdown's pretty irrelevant, to be honest.
Okay.
At the moment. It's just filler as it stands.
Right.
But the main show, the weekly main show is Monday Night Raw. And you've watched that obviously a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was it was great after the Summerslam one.
Yeah, exactly. And Raw is what you usually find a lot of the time now is that the pay-per-views maybe aren't the big events, but sometimes the Raws after the pay-per-views now seem like the bigger events because people hear what's happened on the pay-per-view, so they turn on the free TV to see what happened, and then that's how they try and surprise them. It's kind of weird, but just so you know, those are the main weekly shows. Mm-hmm. Raw, which is Monday nights, and that's been going since the early 90s. Smackdown, which is on Thursdays, and then you have like NXT and stuff like that as well.
Sam Chaplin, other host of Cinema Swirl, was trying to help me remember them, all the different names for the shows. And he tweeted in saying, during the week, the wrestlers smack each other down, and then as a special treat in the summer, they slam each other.
For fuck's sake.
Then he said, by Monday, their bodies always hurt. How's your knee feeling? A bit Monday Night Raw.
Alright, that works as like, because it's the night after the pay-per-view, yeah. But Raw's not just always the night after the pay-per-view, it's every week, you see.
Right,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
During Survivor Series, wrestlers sit around and watch a whole series of reality show Survivor. It's a bit like Gogglebox.
That is not entirely accurate.
No? And obviously at TLC, the wrestlers just look after each other and it's really cute.
No, that's seriously definitely not accurate. They're the total opposite.
God damn it,
accurate.
Sam Chaplin.
Sam, I'll give you, you're 1 in 4 there, okay? There was a solid hit.
I thought they were great.
And the rest of those went sailing by. The weekly shows then, I mean, every week those are happening. Raw is 3 hours, which is, for me, that's insane because...
Yeah, it's every week.
I mean, it's every week it's 3 hours, and 3 hours is like, that's how long the pay-per-view is meant to be, you know?
But on the pay-per-view's like 4.5 hours or something.
Yeah,
silly.
SummerSlam was 4 hours long this year, but that was like a big deal they made out of it. Like it was a promotional thing, like it's 4 hours long. But WrestleMania 20, that was 5 hours long.
Oh.
So there are some shows, usually the big one like WrestleMania, and now it seems SummerSlam can be an exception to the rule, but by and large the pay-per-views are meant to be 3 hours long.
Okay.
So, but that's kind of weird building to what's meant to be a big show. That's the same length of time as the weekly show.
They should cut down Raw a bit.
Yeah. I'd love if it was 2 hours, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
It's weird because, like, on the one hand, I feel there's not enough time for them to develop, like, all the various different wrestlers and stuff and all the gimmicks and storylines and expand on them. But then also it seems to just go on forever.
They managed to do less in 3 hours than they used to do in 2.
I feel there's a lot more going on in NXT in 1 hour than there is in...
There's a sense of urgency, I think, and that means that, like, when someone appears on screen, it has to be relevant, what's it do with the storyline, and we're moving it forward. As opposed to 3 hours, it's like, well, Seth will probably be out 3 or 4 times tonight, so... You know, they kind of, it's not as urgent. And when it's not urgent, then it's not everything that's going to happen is going to be the best it can be. Because, all right, that segment was pretty crap with John, but we're going to see him 3 times later this hour. So he can improve on that, I guess. Whereas back in the Attitude Era, when Raw was, you know, just under 2 hours, you would see Steve Austin once. And that would be for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe.
Right.
And it would fucking count. Because everyone would turn over immediately to see what was happening during those 5 or 10 minutes. It does, but I think the problem with it is that I think they got a sweet deal with their network where it was, right, if you have a third hour, you'll get this much more money. And the show costs a lot to produce, and I think the cost of doing an extra hour was so much lower than the money they were going to make from advertising. Because you hear, like, both Triple H and Vince McMahon, who would be the 2 men who have the say-so at the moment in WWE. I've heard both of them in interviews saying, yeah, maybe it is a bit too long, but we can do.
Right.
So it's like, there's some evil monster with his finger on the button who has 3 hours and someone stop him. Save us. Now, pay-per-views, there's generally 12 in a year, as I've said, which is nice for me to say because there was at one point in the mid-2000s where there was 15 in a year.
Well, that's really complicated. How do you remember, at least this is once a month, how do you remember 15?
There used to be like different brands, so Raw and SmackDown, it wasn't just the main roster. Raw would have a roster and SmackDown would have a roster with different wrestlers and different champions.
Right.
So there'll be 2 world champions, 2 sets of tag champions, 2 women's champions even. So that was the way for a while because they had such a big roster. So sometimes those guys would double over and you'd have extra shows.
Oh, I see.
But I remember them going like, we next join you on pay-per-view in 3 days from now. For fuck's sake, guys. And, you know, I think someone once worked it out during that period, and it wasn't WWE's best period, the mid-2000s. Whereas, like, if you paid for the HD stream of every pay-per-view in America, you were basically paying like $300 or $400.
Wow.
And it's not as if you've got them in your DVD collection for the rest of your life. It's like once the day after, the 2 or 3 days after that pay-per-view, you lose access to it.
Oh my God, seriously?
Oh yeah, it was just like a channel. It would play for like a week maybe, you know, a couple of days, and then that would be it.
So how much would people pay for like one pay-per-view?
$50.
For what? Just to see a show?
Just for a regular show. And it went up because I remember WrestleMania they started charging more for, and then there was the HD stream. WrestleMania 31 this year, even though you could have watched it on the network, the suggested retail price from WWE was $60.
Wow.
But generally the pay-per-view providers would add an extra charge on top of that, so it'll probably be more closer to $70. Surely
that costs more than a ticket to go see it in person.
Well, to go see it in person, I mean, to get like just like an entry-level, regular, crappy seat there, because WrestleMania has a lot of people would buy the good tickets straight away. But yeah, for $80 or $70, you could probably get in there.
Wow.
Which is funny to think.
That's absolutely ridiculous. And to think that over 1 million people paid that.
Yeah. So yeah, back at that one time that over 1 million people bought it, yeah, they would have been paying $40 or $50. So that's a lot of money.
That's ridiculous. No wonder they're so rich.
Yeah, they've made a lot of money out of pay-per-views. But I think, you know, online piracy, you know, people just finding out the results online and it being uploaded the next day. The last few years before the network came out, the pay-per-views...
Well, that's the thing. I remember when we first started dating, the network wasn't available in the UK yet.
Yeah.
And I remember how difficult it was trying to find any wrestling online.
If you're someone like me who just simply out of principle does not want to have TV, so he does not pay for a TV license, then yes, it was very, very difficult to actually watch them. We would try and watch them live in the local sports bar where we were, because that was the easiest way to watch them. But like, yeah, it was kind of ridiculous when you think about it. It's like the difficulty to get some of those shows. And I mean, it's smart, I think, to do something like the network, I guess, because if people are willing to pay to support you or whatever, and it's a decent enough service and it's a low enough price, they'll do that instead of pirating. Yeah. But if it's like $60 or $70 to watch a pay-per-view, so many people are going to pirate them. Like,
yeah,
it's
well,
crazy.
I'm not going to pay $60, but I might pay the undisclosed monthly agreement. Like,
yeah, that seems much more reasonable, I guess. But I mean, because I just remember I have had friends in bands, and they would show me a number. I'm like, whoa, what's that? Is that how much your album sold? And go, no, that's the illegal downloads of our album. That one there with the 0 less, that's how many albums we sold.
Wow.
So obviously with WWE, I mean, you could just pop on a torrent site now or whatever, and you could probably see millions of people downloading the show instead. So the network's a much smarter way, because the pay-per-views were way too pricey. But we've got 12 pay-per-views in a year, each one more important than the last, they'd have you believe. But in actuality, there's maybe 4 really important ones. The rest are kind of window dressing, you could say.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the ones I know off the top of my head.
Because we refer to the big 4.
Right.
There's 4 big shows that kind of dot the calendar year.
Okay, let's see if I know them.
Okay.
Royal Rumble.
Yeah, Royal Rumble, which would happen in January, the start of the year.
WrestleMania.
Yes, usually March/early April.
Summerslam.
Yes, in August.
And Tables, Ladders, Chairs.
Oh, no, very close.
No?
The one the month before, Survivor Series.
Oh.
In November.
Damn.
But that being said, Survivor Series hasn't been very relevant for the last, 6 years. So you're forgiven for thinking TLC is a bigger one.
I'm still allowed in the wrestling community.
Your card hasn't been revoked just yet, madam, okay? So, yes, Joe mentioned the big 4 there. And usually, the other pay-per-views should try to be building towards these big 4, okay? And usually, WWE as well, they will sacrifice the quality of other shows to improve the quality of the big four.
Okay.
And the big four is usually if there's going to be someone like The Rock appearing or Brock Lesnar, like kind of a big super name, they would appear for one of those big four pay-per-views as opposed to the other ones.
Makes sense.
They're
A draw, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Big draw. So, Royal Rumble, obviously happening in January, is the first pay-per-view of the year, and it's a very, very important one as well, because it helps build towards WrestleMania, and it's something which I think we'll cover our own Royal Rumble episode, I think, at some point, so Joe's more familiar with them. But the Royal Rumble itself has got a really cool built-in concept. Every year, the main event of the Royal Rumble has always been the same. It's a 30-man battle royale to decide who goes to WrestleMania to challenge for the belt.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I remember this a bit because they always show like a flashback or whatever in WrestleMania. Like, here's what you missed on whatever it is, Royal Rumble.
Here's when Roman Reigns got booed and we pretended didn't happen at the Royal Rumble.
It seems really chaotic.
It is, because you start off with two people, and then every minute or two, another person comes out, and then another, until then all 30 have gotten in the ring. And
how are you supposed to watch the wrestling when there's 30 wrestling going on?
Because people get thrown out. You get eliminated by being thrown over the top rope. So you don't have to pin them or submit them. You literally just have to throw them out of the ring. Okay. So usually people are being thrown out as people are coming in. It will usually fill up at a point. That sounds
so confusing.
No, it's not. It's just you get eliminated, but then every 2 minutes someone's coming out. So the fighting is happening in the ring. There's people constantly joining. At the same time, there's people being
I'd lose track.
Yeah, you usually can kind of lose track, but they're usually quite good at pointing out, kind of going, oh, he's been eliminated, or the big move will be the person being eliminated. Right. So you should usually be able to see what's happening in those. But there's so many cool stories you can tell in that, because the classic one they would do, which is, the underdog who has to get the match at WrestleMania. Well, there's no chance he'll get it normally, so he enters the Royal Rumble, which everyone can be a part of. And he enters right at the start, say, number 1 and number 2. So there's 28 other guys who have to come out before he could win the match. And that's always really cool, because he's in there for an hour. And the other guy...
Hour? Is that how long it is?
It's usually around an hour. And then the guy coming out right at the end, he's number 30. He's he's just straight out of the locker room. He's all fresh as a daisy against the guy who's been in there for an hour, absolutely, exhausted. And there's so many cool stories you can tell in the Royal Rumble as a result.
I mean, it sounds really dull, but I'm sure it isn't. It must be fun.
It can be very dull if it's predictable. And this year, when everyone was booing Roman Reigns, as we mentioned, that was a case of the entire crowd sniffing out what was going to happen, not liking it, and then just folding their arms going, well, fuck this then. At their best, the Royal Rumble can be somewhat, even if you have a good idea who's going to win, it can be used as a really unpredictable way of bringing people back, like returning characters, like cameo appearances. Like Drew Carey appeared in the Royal Rumble once.
Drew Carey, the comedian?
Yeah, the comedian. Or there was one time at the Royal Rumble where Mick Foley entered, but he entered 3 times as each of his alter egos. Wow. He kept being thrown in and coming back in with a different shirt and different music, like, hey, I'm coming in, baby, So there's an opportunity to kind of showcase everyone, really, because when that person's music hits and they come in, they'll usually have a minute or two of a flurry where you think, oh, they might just win it. And it's a cool concept, and it's one that's been going for over 20 years. So it tends to work quite well. And obviously it always builds to WrestleMania. The pay-per-view after that is been changed around a few times recently. It used to be No Way Out, and it was just kind of, this is the one before WrestleMania. Let's settle any loose ends up before WrestleMania. Then it became another pay-per-view. Now it's called Fastlane, and has seemingly no defining characteristics other than a vague speedometer graphic.
I swear I've never heard of this. Fastlane. Do they race?
I'll be honest, when I saw the pay-per-view poster for Fastlane, which was literally Randy Orton with his hand out.
Did he have a go faster stripe on his side?
It was Randy Orton was hand out and a needle kind of going Fastlane, that's kind of, it's fast or whatever. And I just thought, is this a movie with Randy Orton? Because Fastlane really sounds like a movie they would make.
I don't understand, is being fast in wrestling good?
Not necessarily, and it's as if it's the one night of the year when things are a little bit faster. WWE Fastlane, the lane you use for when you want to speed.
So what, are the matches shorter?
No, nothing about it.
Nothing is different.
No, nothing
Just
is different.
Unnecessary branding.
It is weird because it used to be, back in the days of the Attitude Era, where most of the pay-per-view names that weren't the big four were just named shows, like No Mercy, or Unforgiven, or Armageddon. And they would say things like, Joanna Graham, this Sunday you will get no mercy from me in the steel cage match. Or like, your sins will be unforgiven. It's on pay-per-view this Sunday. Check it out and buy it. It's only $90 on pay-per-view. But then they went the way of, right, themed pay-per-views. Every pay-per-view has to have a gimmick. So it was like, this month, it's Fatal 4-Way. Every match is a Fatal 4-Way where there's 4 wrestlers facing off.
Okay.
Or Breaking Point, where every match is a submission match, even though we've got no submission wrestlers on the roster. Cody Rhodes and Triple H in a submission match, because I don't know.
What is a submission wrestler?
A submission wrestler will be someone like maybe Daniel Bryan, or someone who uses a submission hold to make his opponent tap out.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of wrestlers obviously have a submission hold. Sasha Banks, obviously, someone who uses a submission maneuver. She would like to make her opponent tap out to win the match. So.
Okay.
So yeah, they went big on the gimmicked pay-per-views.
Did they just forget Fastlane? Did they just leave it behind? Like, oops, forgot about that one.
They basically then, what happened was, it seemed they looked at the ones that they thought were decent hanging on to, the gimmick shows. They kept those, and then replaced the remaining ones with the most banal, randomly named shows ever. Hence, WWE Fastlane.
It's like they were originally going to have them all in like roller skates or like roller blades or something, and then they forgot to add that at the end. They were like, oh yeah, it's still called Fastlane.
It really felt like there was 5 or 6 pay-per-views to fill up, and they had a list of just random hypothetical pay-per-view names that they could use, and this was one of them. And I think that will be something we will say more than once.
Is whoever was responsible for naming Fastlane also responsible for Fang McFrost?
Possibly. Chili McFreeze at it again, you know? And I will say this is correct as of September 2015. WWE always change names of shows, with the exception of the big 4. Obviously, those are kind of ingrained. But they always change the names of shows. They change the placement of shows. You know, a show that might have been originally in February is now in October. That kind of thing.
Is WrestleMania always the same time of year?
WrestleMania is always March or April.
Okay.
So always. And Rumble always January. SummerSlam always August. And Survivor Series always November. So then we get to March, and it's WrestleMania. And WrestleMania we've spoken about a number of times, and we've watched a number of WrestleMania matches for kind of, or matches we review for the wrestlers, because it's generally the biggest show of the year.
You get huge matches like Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg, where they do nothing.
Where they hug.
Yeah.
And people boo, you know. What have been your thoughts of watching WrestleMania so far? Because obviously WrestleMania, biggest show of the year, always the biggest arena, it would seem. You're usually in front of tens of thousands of people. Out
of all the shows I've watched, my favourites have always been WrestleMania. I say always as though I've seen loads of them. I think I've seen 2 WrestleManias.
You've seen 30 and... Well, you've seen 31 and most of 30.
Yeah.
But I think WrestleMania 31 this year was the first show I remember you genuinely loving, like from start to finish.
Yeah, exactly. And we live tweeted it as well, which was really fun.
Definitely.
It was just really silly this year, though, because it was in broad daylight, obviously. And then you had like The Undertaker and Bray Wyatt, who had very dark kind of entrances.
It didn't really work in there.
Didn't really work.
Yeah.
But it was really fun, and it was like a huge amount of variation, and I loved all the big expensive-y gimmicks, like Arnold Schwarzenegger being there.
And the big fireworks and stuff like that. Yeah, I do like the fact that there's kind of a little bit of a spectacle, and even if the storylines don't necessarily get paid off the way that you think they should, I mean, originally WrestleMania was like, this is it, season finale. You know, this is the end of this feud. But usually now, you always have the rematches and they go back to it. But even if you don't get that, the hype, the pageantry, you know, the sets, you know.
Yeah, a lot more effort seems to go into everything. The costumes are more elaborate for it. The set's all better.
The crowd is always usually, it's like the biggest collection of most passionate fans in the world all descend upon wherever WrestleMania is. It's always cool looking back at the different years. You can it's a barometer of how well the company is doing, kind of overall, looking at the WrestleMania that year, just even in terms of the size of the crowd. I mean, if you look back in the dark ages of... Remember when we watched Bret and Steve Austin in that I Quit match?
Oh, yeah.
That was a WrestleMania.
Oh, my God.
WrestleMania
yeah,
13.
Of course, yeah.
And it was such a regular-ass looking show, just, you know, little hexagonal screen.
That's so odd to think about compared to WrestleMania this year.
And other than the match quality, nothing about it screamed WrestleMania. Whereas this year, you know, you had a big elaborate set, you had fucking jets flying over, you know, fireworks going around the roof of the stadium, 80,000 people, you know. What are your thoughts, though? I'd like to know, because this is a big thing that people have with WrestleMania, if it should be indoors or outdoors. Because Vince is of the opinion that it has to be outdoors now, because it has to be a big outdoor spectacle. I like it indoors, though, sometimes, because I think if it's indoors, there's a roof on the place, it sounds louder, and even though if there's fewer people there, I think it's a lot more electric.
I think if they're going to have it outdoors, it should be at night.
Yeah, I think so, definitely.
Well, because it was so weird having it in daytime. Like, it takes away a lot of the atmosphere.
I mean, seeing the people at the WrestleMania that was in New Jersey in March the other year, and I mean, I went to WrestleMania, I didn't wear no goddamn winter coat when I was doing it. I was sucking down ice water and beers just to not burst into flames because it was so warm, you know? But yeah, I don't know, the outside, it's a bit of a coin flip, because if it's outdoors and there's no roof on the place, the reactions can maybe sometimes be lost a little bit.
That's true, yeah.
And I've heard tale of the wrestlers in the ring, they're like, are we doing something wrong? Because they think they can't hear anything because it's so quiet.
Yeah.
And that's really, like, quite funny.
No, that's a good point. But I can understand as well them wanting to sell more seats.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I don't know.
It's a bit of a... I think there's can be a happy medium.
Yeah.
The WrestleMania I went to, there was 70,000 people there, and there was a roof on the place.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, I mean, there's got to be a few more of those, you know?
Yeah.
No jets, obviously, but you can make do. So, yes, WrestleMania, always a big spectacle, and people always tend to get really pissed off if the WrestleMania doesn't turn out like they wanted it to. Like, if WrestleMania is bad, that's going to make everyone kind of say wrestling is bad at the moment.
Yeah,
you know? People associate the two. WrestleMania, a lot of the perception of the product is really down to how people buy into the show, and I think wrestling's in a happy place at the moment because people loved WrestleMania 31. They really, really loved it.
Yeah, it was really good.
And they thought they'd hate it as well.
Yeah.
That's what I like most about it. And the same thing happened the year before.
Really?
We all thought we'd hate WrestleMania 30 and we all loved it. So there you go. It shows.
Yeah.
Interesting how that works out. After WrestleMania, we have a show that's called WWE Extreme Rules. It's the one night of the year where WWE goes extreme.
So this is the one, I think I've heard of this. They were allowed weapons?
Yes. So usually the matches will be what we call like gimmick matches. There'll be like no disqualifications, or it's going to be like a street fight or a cage match or last man standing or some big kind of spectacle match. Every match has to follow some... You can't just have a regular one-on-one match. At Extreme Rules, it has to have some sort of tweak to it.
Okay, to make it outlandish or extreme.
Now, Extreme Rules had a different name. Before it was WWE Extreme Rules, it was a summer pay-per-view that was called WWE One Night Stand.
Oh, okay.
And before it was WWE One Night Stand, a couple of years before that, it was actually called ECW One Night Stand.
Oh.
And what actually you watch when you see Extreme Rules now is an incredibly warped, watered-down version of what originally was the ECW reunion show. The one that you and I watched for John Cena and Rob Van Dam.
Huh.
So that's kind of where the Extreme Rules came from.
That kind of makes sense, though. Because ECW is more kind of extreme, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. ECW's whole thing was that it was, meant to be no disqualifications. All the matches are hardcore. And
so they were like that all the time?
They were like that all the time. And it's kind of funny because, originally ECW reunion shows, they had two of those. And then it was like, right, now we have all these brands, so let's just make it WWE One Night Stand, which made no sense because the idea of it being One Night Stand was that ECW came back for one night.
Yeah.
Because ECW was kind of greasy and gritty. It was like, it's a one night stand, we'll never speak of it again.
Right.
That was the whole thing. A one night stand is not a yearly arrangement.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm happy it's called Extreme Rules now,
Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense.
After that, we've got another pay-per-view which definitely falls into the category of Randy Orton with his hand out in front of it and could have been a pay-per-view name or maybe a movie name. As a matter of fact, I'm so unsure now whether the Fastlane poster was Randy Orton going like that with his hand out, or if it's actually Payback. I think it might be Payback. Payback, yeah, it's just another named pay-per-view. There's nothing special about it as it stands. No identity, really, which is kind of sad when I think about it. There's two of those so close together.
Yeah, what a waste. So I'm guessing no one's favourite show is Payback or Fastlane.
I'd be very, very surprised if anyone's favourite show was Payback or Fastlane.
So it's the only reason they even do them, just to make money?
It's just to have a monthly show, really, you know. And I think the idea was just they give it any old name, I guess, is their idea, you know, because...
It just seems a shame they haven't done something with it.
What I don't like as well, and something I think you're maybe missing out on being a new fan, when we watch these shows, have you ever noticed what the sets look like?
Not particularly, unless they're really outlandish.
I mean, obviously WrestleMania is a big fancy set, but do you remember what the Extreme Rules set looked like? Because we did watch the show.
From what I remember, it was just a ring. Yeah. And then there were like 2 tiers of seating. Yeah. That's all I remember.
But the actual like stage itself where the big screen is and all that...
I don't remember there being a screen. There probably was.
Now, during the heyday of pay-per-views, when each one kind of was tried to be given like kind of a bit of an identity at least, one of the big parts of that was that the stage and the ramp and all the setup would have a specific unique look and would be designed to look a certain way to reflect what the show was.
That's cool.
So, like, I mean, we're doing ones in the Attitude Era at the moment where, like, they had a show, the Royal Rumble, and the theme was, like, you know, there was, like, a taxi cab hanging above the ring, and it was all, like, streets and, like, spray paint and trash cans and stuff. Or there was, like, one which was Armageddon and had, like, a post-apocalyptic thing where there was, like, a crashed helicopter.
God.
And there's even one year they did it for Armageddon. There was, like, it was, like, a big giant castle. Or New Year's Revolution where it was a big dragon and all this kind of stuff. Favourite one ever, Unforgiven 2001, the logo for it was Steve Austin with 3 screaming faces coming out the side of him, spinning around really fast.
Fucking hell.
Because Steve Austin had gone mad. It's just head spinning around going, what?
That sounds like the best, like, crappy ride at a horror, like, amusement park ever.
See if you can hold on to a greased up Steve Austin head as it's spinning around going, what? But yeah, back in the day, they would do set designs, specific sets, which they would make for the shows. Now, it's just the same stage they use for Raw, SmackDown, everything.
Yeah, they should bring back that.
It's really boring at the moment, because it's just the screen, font. They don't even change the ring ropes. And
that's the thing. I find it so hard to learn the difference. I think partly because they're all very similar in many ways.
Yeah.
Like visually, you can't just sort of... If you show me just a still from any random show,
you probably would be able to,
I don't think I could.
Other than reading the
reading
ring
it,
apron.
or if I'd seen the match and I remembered it from...
And I don't want you to think as well that it's just like, oh, we had like, you know, certain themes for very outlandishly named pay-per-views. There was even like very subtle elements that were always consistent. Like there was a show that used to happen after WrestleMania called Backlash, and their theme, whatever it was always just some sort of like sword or hook or thing like that. And they would have variations on the set where it would have these big kind of claws that would be kind of moving in and out, these like steel structures. It was really cool, like quite inventive.
Yikes.
And for me, it's easy because I grew up with this and I know the shows that have their identities, and I probably, most of it is even subconscious, I would imagine. Whereas you, it's going to be really hard.
It is really, I can confirm it's really hard.
And if you're a new fan as well, I'm guessing that this is probably the same.
I don't know, maybe I'm just really bad at learning things like names.
I would imagine the more we watch classic matches for this podcast for different wrestlers, I think the more of those we watch at classic shows, maybe the more the identity might be apparent, because as it stands with these ones, it just really work.
It's quite overwhelming, I think, knowing there's like 12 like shows plus the weekly ones. It's a lot to have to learn all in one go, really. And
when like a third of them have no identity at all, you know, it's quite difficult.
And to be fair, I haven't seen a lot of them as well. Like I've not seen, I don't think, any Payback or Fastlane.
Payback, of course, taking place in May, but a pay-per-view that follows that in June, which has become one of my favourites every year, and has probably been the closest that a new show has come to being a part of the Big Four and being an important part of the year. And that is WWE Money in the Bank. Oh. A very, very important show that has strong branding, I would definitely say, strong visual elements, and a very, very strong story. Every year at this show, the Money in the Bank ladder match happens, which was a tradition that was set up back in 2004, I believe, where it's a ladder match where 6 to 8 people all compete in it to climb up and grab the briefcase at the top. And what is inside that briefcase is a contract that says anytime in the next calendar year, any place, you can have a championship match for the World Heavyweight Championship.
I remember that was really such a confusing concept to me when I first started watching wrestling, because I think it was Seth Rollins who had it
originally, when he was feuding with Dean. It was
and
just
I didn't understand why he had this. I thought it was a briefcase full of money. I mean, come on. He carries it around everywhere. It's gold,
Golden
and they call it the
briefcase.
Money in the Bank. I assumed that's what it was.
It's cool because the phrase "money in the bank" obviously referring to like the fact that whoever cashes this in would usually do it with an unfair advantage in mind.
Yeah.
Obviously, in our How to Shield episode, we saw Seth trading in after Roman and Brock had beaten each other to death, and then Seth slithered in with his briefcase and got himself a championship opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's kind of was the whole idea of it, was that it was the not knowing of when it would be cashed in.
The swerve.
The swerve effect.
Yeah.
Most people would cash it in, randomly, but there has been instances of someone being forthright and saying, I'm going to do it at this point. John Cena and Rob Van Dam.
Of course, John Cena.
Well, John Cena, of course, he did it. He graciously gave advance notice to CM Punk that he was going to challenge him for the belt. And he was He was the first person to lose his Money in the Bank championship match as a result.
Oh, wow.
He put it up on the line and he cashed in unsuccessfully. John Cena, he had to defend his title against Rob Van Dam in that ECW match we watched. But that was because Rob said in advance that, hey, I'm an ECW guy, I want it at the reunion show. So that's kind of was a cool thing, because it wouldn't happen normally.
Yeah.
That way. And Money in the Bank is really cool because it's like, it's a nice running thread for the whole year, and it's probably been overdone, I guess. But I like the idea of some guy having the briefcase and not knowing when he's going to cash it in.
I think it makes it more interesting.
Yeah. Well, I say that at the moment, Sheamus has it.
Oh, that's true.
So maybe asterisk beside the word interest.
Well, I think if you've got an interesting character,
yeah,
you can't really go wrong with it, surely. But
True.
I think giving the Money in the Bank to just some
random guy,
maybe won't suddenly make them the most interesting of wrestlers.
Yeah. Money in the Bank as well, I did mention Strong Branding has the kind of the briefcase logo that's on the briefcase itself with the Money in the Bank. And of course, having the very amazing money. So
it has its own theme tune.
It does. It has its own theme tune. And not to keep bringing him up, that was Donald Trump's music when he came out in wrestling.
He had his own music.
Money. Wait,
I'm so confused.
Except if he came back now, it would be China, 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 China. China in the Bank. After Money in the Bank, we've got another pay-per-view, which is one we watched rather recently, which is a very eventful show, just in terms of what happened on it, but as a monthly identity, not so much battleground, very much fitting in again to the theme of just a named show, nothing necessarily specific happens at it.
Oh, okay.
So Battleground was very good this year, but not known for...
Which one was Battleground?
That was where we had Seth and Brock facing off with The Undertaker returning.
Right, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was real fun. After that, we have SummerSlam, and SummerSlam is probably, some would say, the number 2 show in the year after WrestleMania, mainly because it happens kind of further into the calendar than that. In terms of what happens at SummerSlam, there's a kind of a prevailing theory that it's WrestleMania for the heels. In that usually, if you're going to have a big twist or kind of a shift in a paradigm shift, or someone's going to turn heel, or a bad guy's going to kind of be in control, it would usually happen around SummerSlam. And we've seen that quite a few times happen throughout the years.
Well, this year in SummerSlam, everything was just inconclusive.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the reign of Jon Stewart began.
Yeah.
And, if you are a Patreon backer, you get access to our amazing SummerSlam 2015 review, of course. SummerSlam, I remember hating for many, many years, mainly because my brother hated it, and it just rubbed off on me by proxy.
Why did your brother hate it?
Because I think SummerSlam 1999, during the Attitude Era, was like a bit of a flop.
Oh, I see.
And it was massively hyped up. And I think it just left a bad taste in our mouths, and it spoiled SummerSlam for like 20 years.
So what do you generally think of SummerSlam now then?
I generally enjoy it. I mean, but it's very hit and miss. SummerSlam, I would say, is one of the biggest shows where you kind of, even though it's the number 2 show of the year, you're not guaranteed it's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
There have been years when it's been dull as fucking dishwater. And there's obviously an idea that sometimes they're like, oh, it has to have a big match at it. And a lot of the times those big matches feel rather thrown together, you know. And I still think SummerSlam, though, they seem intent on making it to be a big yearly event now. If you notice this year, they were doing things like they had the NXT taping there, and it was like a whole week of events. Yeah. So they're trying to make it like WrestleMania 2, in that people will come to a city for a week to see SummerSlam and all the other events that are surrounding it. The biggest party of the summer usually closes out in August. I always hated SummerSlam because it reminded me that it was time to go back to school. Aww. That could also have been a reason why it was like, last weekend in summer is not a fun time when you're a teenager. Yeah. So maybe that was one of the reasons why I hated it.
You know your mum's going to take you out shopping for new school shoes on the Monday.
I can't focus on Jesse Ventura refereeing. I've got stupid itchy school pants on. After SummerSlam, we've got another pay-per-view that has a good identity and a pretty strong gimmick. It's called Night of Champions.
I don't think I've heard of this one.
It's the one which, because it's September at the moment, so it's one they're building up to next. Night of Champions has got a very simple premise, which is every championship has to be defended. So, you know, there's like the World Championship and the Intercontinental, the United States, Tag Belts, and the Divas Championship. So those 5 matches have to take place on that night. Usually, most of the belts get defended on pay-per-view, but this is the one night of the year they make sure it definitely happens. There was a bit of a problem with this, though, back when we had more than one brand. You had to have, like, 10 championship matches. The 2 world belts, the 2 tag belts, the 2 women's matches.
Fucking hell.
You know, at a partridge in a pear tree. So I'm enjoying this pay-per-view a lot more now that there can be other matches on the show other than title ones.
Oh, I look forward to watching it this month, and I'm guessing we'll be offering that as well as a Patreon.
These will all be reviewed for Patreon, obviously. So maybe as we're going through them and reviewing these monthly shows, maybe their identities will spring out to you a little bit more.
I hope so, yeah. I'm looking forward to my first ever Night of Champions.
After Night of Champions in October, we have a pay-per-view that is obviously, on paper, seems like a very strong concept, but is one that really a lot of long-term fans massively disagree with, and that is WWE Hell in a Cell.
Now, this was something you were talking to me about not that long ago. I didn't realise it was a pay-per-view.
Yeah, well, it was originally just a match.
Because the only Hell in a Cell matches I've watched are the famous one with Mick Foley versus The Undertaker.
Yes.
And then Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins.
Yes.
Where, again, they climb on top of the cage.
You think that's just what happens in cell matches, is people climb them up?
You're telling me it isn't?
No, it's not. Dean and Seth climbing up. We waited 15 years for that shit.
But Mick Foley was there and everything.
Yeah.
Surely it was all...
Mick Foley was there, warning everyone not to do it for another 15 years or the curse would follow them.
As far as I'm concerned, Mick Foley lives in that cage, or on top of the cage, and that's what happens in Hell in a Cell, is Mick Foley is there and you climb on the cell and you fall in.
Mick, Dangerous Precedent Foley, as he's known amongst circles here. But the issue I have with Hell in a Cell is that obviously the 2 ones which you've seen are good examples of when a Hell in a Cell match is necessary. As we mentioned before, it's the cell structure, so it's the big cage with the roof on top, really dangerous. Mick Foley, his career ended there, all this crazy stuff. It's meant to be the most sadistic match in all of wrestling. And
hang on, so this was started... When was the first Hell in a Cell match?
1987 was the first Hell in a Cell match.
Okay, right. So there really weren't that many of them?
No, I mean, between 97 and 2005, there was maybe Hell in a Cell matches on pay-per-view. They did a couple of other little bits to kind of promote it on the show, but when someone said Hell in a Cell, that was like an oh shit moment. As in, I remember when Triple H and Cactus Jack was like, it's going to be a Hell in a Cell, we all like stood up and we're like, because it had been the first one in forever. We're like, you can't do that. Does Vince know? Have you permission? But now it's like, I'm going to see you Hell in a Cell. Well, obviously you are, because it's October. That's when we have them now.
So how many matches are there in one Hell in a Cell?
One year they did, I think, 3. And in the last 2 years, there's only been the one. But
wait, so it's how long are the shows?
3 hours long still.
So what? They have a 3-hour-long match?
Oh no! There's other matches that happen on these shows.
Oh, I see.
Likewise with with Money in the Bank and with Night of Champions, there'll be other matches that are happening on the show, not just the title matches and the ladder matches. So yeah, stuff does happen as normal, but the prevailing theme is still meant to be Hell in a Cell. So Hell in a Cell, currently we only seem to have one per show, and that's the way I like it. But there was years where there was 2 or 3.
Yeah, I can't imagine that would be particularly interesting.
And it's, when it's not a blood feud, and when the reason we're in a Hell in a Cell is because it is scheduled and not because our feud has come to the point where a cage with a roof is the only way to settle it. That's how it should be. Not, our opening contest tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is a Hell in a Cell match. Let's get them on down here, folks. Hey!
Well, we've got the cage set up. I mean, we may as well go in there.
Guys coming out. We warmed up the crowd, lads, with a Hell in a Cell match. The match that warped me as a child and scarred me for years to come has warmed up the crowd tonight in Fresno, folks. They're a hot one. They like their Hell in a Cell matches. I hate it.
Okay.
I hate the fact that they just throw them away like that.
Yeah.
But, if you're going to do one, I see the value in... Their theory might be this. It's that some lapsed fan, maybe, will be kind of scrolling and they'll see the ad saying, Hell in a Cell. And that just might make them go, oh, that's that really dangerous match, isn't it? Legitimately, that's their rationale for it. That someone will look at that and probably go, I remember when Mick Foley fell off the Hell in a Cell, and fucking buy a network subscription for the month, or get the free month at least to see the show.
Yeah.
Because Hell in a Cell does have name value, I guess.
Right.
But I don't know, for you, because you've seen 2 crazy Hell in a Cell matches, does that name kind of make you excited, or...
It certainly did, but now I know how many sort of mediocre Hell in a Cell matches there are. It doesn't really...
I really want to show you a really mediocre Hell in a Cell match. I like the idea of doing how to match types, have specific episodes dedicated to just one match type.
Cool.
And if we do how to Hell in a Cell, I definitely want to see, us watch Randy Orton and John Cena in Hell in a Cell.
No, do we have to?
Fucking boring it is. Really tedious trash. After that, it's another one of our big 4. It's the Thanksgiving tradition, and it was one of Vince McMahon's earliest pay-per-view concepts, which is the Survivor Series. His theory was that let's do a big show as a Thanksgiving tradition. People are all home for Thanksgiving. There's a big family atmosphere. Surely they want to watch a wrestling pay-per-view. Now, some would say, and possibly me included, that the other reason he had for that was that his main competition, WCW, their version of WrestleMania happened in November.
Oh.
And maybe or maybe not, Vince McMahon threatened to pull all WWF programming from certain pay-per-view carriers if they didn't let him run his show directly in competition to that pay-per-view. And so it has a little bit of a dark and gritty origin, this show. It was really kind of a fuck you to the competition and them flexing their muscles more than anything else.
Huh.
Have you heard of Survivor Series before?
I'm pretty sure I've heard of Survivor Series. Is that one that you've covered in the Attitude Era podcast?
We've had Survivor Series in the Attitude Era podcast. That's the one where Steve Austin got ran down.
Yes, and the artwork is The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Yes, that's where I know that from.
Survivor Series, every year they take the top guy in the company and they just run him over in a car. No, they don't. It's a tradition. But I don't want to be run over, Vince. God damn it, Steve. It's tradition. Come on.
It's Thanksgiving,
It's Thanksgiving, God damn it. Now, where's the keys for the goddamn sedan? Survivor Series has got quite a number of traditions going for it. Survivor Series, first of all, is a match type. A Survivor Series match is when you have 2 teams of 5 facing each other off in like an elimination match.
Okay.
So as soon as you get pinned, you have to go back to the locker room, and so the team diminishes. The last guy surviving, their team wins.
Right. And do you tag people in?
Yeah, you tag people in. And that's really cool because there's so many stories you can tell in that. The most fun story, obviously, being the kind of, it's 1-on-4. How is this guy gonna win the match?
Oh, yeah.
There was a great one year where it was Ric Flair and like 4 retired legends like Dusty Rhodes and Sergeant Slaughter. And Roddy Piper. all these old men, and they're
Just a ring full of old men.
Ring full of old men. The team they were taking on was these young male cheerleaders called the Spirit Squad. And all of Ric Flair's team got eliminated. So it was one old man against 4 20-year-old punks. And Flair went the distance. Because that the story was, like, how can this old crafty veteran take on these 4 young, hungry kids? And he managed to win. So you can always do a real cool story there.
Yeah.
Where a guy overcomes the odds or something like that. And Survivor Series matches are good, but I don't think Vince McMahon likes tag team matches or multi-man matches that much.
Yeah, I imagine, like, with the New Day and the Primetime Players and everything, it's something that could be explored more.
Yeah, I mean, you could, like, lump together tag teams and do it, but the problem with it is that if you are building towards a big show, and the thing that sells the most tickets, it's just always been proven, is it's like 2 people in a feud. And it's like, Joe Graham, this Sunday, you and I are going to be in the ring, and one man or woman is going to come out standing. See you there on Sunday. If you don't see this pay-per-view, the world will end. You know?
Okay.
Now that's a lot more, I've got to see it, than Joe Graham, this Sunday, you and I and 4 partners of our choosing will be in the ring. And it may come down to you and me, or it may come down to any permutation of the 5 people on each of our teams. Either way, it's going to be a great show. Make sure you tune in. If you don't see it, I'm sure someone will tell you about it. Or tomorrow, okay, bye. You know, that's not, you know, I think maybe it doesn't jump out as much.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of really talented tag team wrestling going on at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea as well. You can do, like, we've seen things as well where we've got, you know, strange bedfellow type tag partners where guys who don't get along have to maybe work it together in a team, and it can be quite good. But Vince McMahon does not like this show anymore.
Okay, I'm surprised it still exists considering he
in 2011, in like a conference call, he was like, "Yeah, I'm basically going to get rid of it." People were fucking outraged because it's a tradition. How dare you? And he just doesn't see it as that. And even though it's still called one of the big 4, and it's so important, Survivor Series is one of, if not the most passable supposed big show of the year. I've not seen a Survivor Series that I've had to have seen in like 6 years, I would say.
So do they tend to just put random guys together? They'll be
More
like,
or less.
Here's Randy Orton, here's Ryback, here's Big Show. They're all playing together.
Like, Randy is feuding with Sheamus, Miz is feuding with Big Show, you know, Dolph Ziggler is feuding at Rusev, so it's Rusev, Big Show, and, you know, it's
that just seems like completely the wrong way to book it.
Yeah, that just seems like that's what you would expect to see on a regular Raw.
Well,
you know?
Maybe I'm making a massive assumption here, but I would have thought being able to wrestle doesn't necessarily mean you can tag team.
Yeah, true.
I think that probably requires different skills.
Yeah.
More cooperation, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. I think I like the idea of them kind of doing it where maybe it's like a team that functions well together, taking on a group of guys who maybe don't function so well together. But
that would be awesome.
Yeah, instead what we usually get is a regular pay-per-view, a really normal regular show where there will be 1 or 2 Survivor Series matches thrown in just because. And the most tragic thing, which I hope we're not going to see this year, because we see it every year, fucking absolutely diabolical, where Vince McMahon, or whoever it is in charge, insists on putting on a Divas Survivor Series match, but still only giving them 5 minutes.
For fuck's sake.
Now, think about this, Joe. If there are 10 people in the Survivor Series match, unless you're going to do a complete whitewash, you have to have a minimum of 5 pinfalls. Like 5 times where it has to be 1, 2, 3, or you tapped out, or you're gone. 5 times in 5 minutes.
It's no fucking wonder people are so goddamn harsh on the Divas and say they can't wrestle.
There was years where literally the entire match was like, and then Crystal runs in and she gets hit. 1, 2, 3. Crystal's gone. Now Tori is in and Tori does a move. 1, 2, 3. Now Tori is gone. And like,
why?
They would just come in, take a move, lose. There was one year where like a lady literally came in and did a dance and then pinned her opponent as 1, 2, 3. You lose. It's awful.
That's so
awful,
shocking.
Awful.
I was watching a match the other day. I can't remember which one it was. It was quite fairly recent. It was like the Bella Twins versus someone. And it was supposed to be one of their longer matches before the Divas Revolution.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, this one's quite a long match. It's like 6 minutes. I was watching it.
6 minutes?
The first, yeah, exactly. I was outraged that it was even supposed to be 6 minutes and that was long. The first 3 minutes were their entrances. The match was only 3 minutes.
fuck's sake,
It's
yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. When you say like they've got 10 minutes, it means 10 minutes minus entrances, minus...
They
bit
shouldn't
at
be
the
allowed to
end.
count the entrances.
Oh, no, definitely not. It's from bell to bell is what
Yeah.
it should be, you know? So, yeah, Survivor Series does suffer on that front. There is one kind of historic thing, and I won't get into it too much now, because it deserves much closer scrutiny later on down the line, I think, in this show. But the Survivor Series screw jobs, which have been kind of, it's become something of a notorious thing. In 1997, there was a very famous incident at the Survivor Series where a wrestler who was leaving the company thought a match was going to end one way, except Vince McMahon, IRL, made the decision be reversed and happen in a different manner. So he basically screwed the guy. Like he said, you're going to win the match, or the match is going to end this way. And then he made it look like the guy gave up and rang the bell and gave the other guy the belt, and everyone ran away.
How did he make it look like the other guy gave up?
He literally told the referee to ring the bell immediately and ring the fucking bell. Right now, ring it, goddamn.
Oh my god.
So, and that was something that happened in real life. As I said, we'll get into it much more later on. It's a huge, huge thing in wrestling. But as a result of that, Survivor Series kind of became synonymous with the screw job. Okay. Because Vince McMahon IRL screwed someone in 1997, and so many years that followed on, Vince McMahon, the character, would screw someone or something screwy would happen. So
even though he hates this show.
Even though maybe that could be one of the reasons why Vince McMahon hates the show.
Maybe he hates the show and so he screws it all up. He's like, kicking down sand castles.
You know what? I would actually say probably Vince McMahon, he did get punched squarely in the face and spat in the face by the wrestler he screwed over at the end of the screw job. So maybe that might have something to do with him trying to... Yeah, that's
bad
right.
Memories.
That's right, folks. Those shitty-ass Diva Survivor Series matches are just a wraparound way of Vince McMahon dealing through his personal bullshit and angst about Survivor Series 1997. we figured it out. Easy peasy. Last show of the year, and a fun show. A show that's always got thrills and spills and chills. TLC, Tables, Ladders and Chairs.
Now, weren't you saying this was invented by Mick Foley?
This show was named after a match type, and that match was tables and ladders and chairs.
Okay.
And it was originally invented in 2000 by Mick Foley's character at the time, who was running things, because there were 3 tag teams, Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys. And the Dudley Boys put everyone through tables, Edge and Christian would hit everyone in the face with chairs, and the Hardy Boys would always jump off ladders. Huh. And Mick Foley's like, there's only one way to settle this. We have to have a match where there are tables and ladders and chairs. Oh my. Tables and ladders and chairs. Oh my. Tables and ladders and chairs. Oh my. You know, Foley, the closet Wizard of Oz fan that he is, coined that. And
that's fantastic. That's so cool.
And a tables, ladders and chairs, or TLC match for short, basically is just a regular ladder match where you have to climb up and grab something, except there are chairs involved and also tables.
Now, are the tables and chairs underneath the ring, or are they out and about?
They're usually like lined up alongside the ring in big stacks and piles. The use of the use of tables, ladders and chairs isn't only encouraged, Joe, it's allowed. It's quite a fun match generally, but at this TLC pay-per-view, which again, when they were giving gimmick shows, TLC was one of the first ones because it was such a popular match type that they thought, fuck it, let's give it its own pay-per-view.
That seems like it. I mean, out of all the ones we've kind of gone over with silly gimmicks and stuff, like Hell in a Cell, which I don't really understand why that has its own pay-per-view.
Yeah.
This one does seem to make sense.
Because you don't just get the TLC matches. What's great about this is there'll be one TLC match, then there'll be a tables match where you have to put someone through a table to win. Oh. Then there'll be a regular ladder match, which will just involve the ladder, which will involve, you know, usually more athletic guys trying to win. And then you'll usually get what's known as a chairs match, and even though I've watched around 4 of them, I still don't know what that is.
Right. Do you have to hit someone with a chair?
There's just chairs around. Okay, that seems what it is.
Chairs. Fine.
But a big shout out to my main man, Paddy Costello, back home in Ireland, who came up with the definitive concept for the chairs match. When we first saw this was going to happen, when we were in Glasgow, it's like the advertisement was, and don't forget, the chairs match. And they didn't tell us what it was. Paddy's theory was that it was like a ladder match, except it was way lower down the belt. And it was akin to unscrewing a light bulb. You had to stand on a wobbly chair and just gently unhook it. And you would put the least nimble wrestlers on the roster, like Mark Henry and The Big Show. Would be like, oh shit, man, I may fall over. I won't be able to get back up.
Whoa, support me, Ryback. Hold my ass.
So TLC, definitely a fun one and a very memorable show to close out the year. So those are the 12 main pay-per-views, and they're pay-per-views which names have long been since forgotten and abandoned, which may very well be brought back. Who knows? But those are the ones we have at the moment, and it seems like that's good. They're not going to change around a whole ton, I don't think. The only one they got rid of recently, which was kind of shocking, was one called the Elimination Chamber. I don't know if you ever heard of an Elimination Chamber.
I don't know what it is, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, I think the Wyatts wrestled the Shield at that pay-per-view.
That could be why I've heard of it.
Yeah, an Elimination Chamber match is it's like a giant steel dome, basically.
Right.
And the guys are held in the little glass pods.
Oh, I've seen one of this.
Yeah, you've seen the one with the New Day, maybe,
yes.
I think. Yeah. And the guys are held in the different pods.
It was really weird.
Yeah. Usually what they would do is that was on before WrestleMania, and they would defend the 2 belts.
Okay.
So it would be kind of like, this is just to decide definitely who's the champion before WrestleMania. But it's a weird show because the chamber itself takes up a huge amount of space. And it's not very fun for the fans there, I think, in terms of they can't really see everything that clearly. But it's not listed this year, but obviously that doesn't mean that it's never coming back. But shows get dropped all the time and picked up all the time. You know, King of the Ring is one which was big when I was watching as a fan, as a kid. It was like a tournament that they would do every year. That was taken away and then brought back.
Did the winner get to be king?
Yes, that's why King Barrett gets to be king, because he won it this year.
Oh, he won it? So what, have they not got that anymore then?
It wasn't a pay-per-view, it was just a random network special.
But he just gets to keep the king
The king crown, yeah. The kingship.
Just indefinitely until they bring it back?
I guess so, until they decide to bring it back again. It's a weird one. But it's funny, I say now pay-per-views, and that just sounds so dated when we say because of the network.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're just as excited now about not only these so-called pay-per-views, but as big an event for us is when NXT has got a special on.
Yeah.
Or when they did the Tokyo show that they did.
Oh, the Beast in the East.
Yeah, and these aren't pay-per-views. These are just, you know, network special events. But at what point are they going to stop being pay-per-views and all just being...
It's so confusing.
It is in a flux at the moment.
Because I'm always really worried I'm going to say that something's a pay-per-view and it's not. I'm going to feel like a right idiot, even though I know it's really hard to remember which are pay-per-views and which are not without having a list or just knowing it.
Yeah, it's quite hard. There's a lot of things working against you there. And, you know, one, the sets and the stages just not having their own identity for the most part.
Yeah.
Two, the fact that they just switched them around willy-nilly.
Yeah.
You know, Extreme Rules used to be summer, now it's April, you know, whatever, that's how they do it. Some of the named shows are just so throwaway. I mean, Fastlane and Payback.
Yeah.
I honestly, which one is the one that Randy Orton doing the hand? I'm thinking now that's
Could be both.
That's Over the Limit, I think. That's a different one altogether.
There's another one?
Another randomly named one that they don't do anymore. So there's a lot working against you trying to remember these.
Yeah.
But if you can know the big 4, you'll be fine. Because I think the only other 2 that are really important, or 3 that are really important, are TLC, Extreme Rules, and
Money in the Bank.
And those all have very strong concepts.
Yeah, I think I remember those ones.
You know, you've got 7 out of 12 there. You know, so you've got most of the important ones that way.
And I think I might remember Payback and Fastlane just because of how ridiculous they are.
Yeah.
And because now I've got Randy Orton catching a clock in my mind.
You know, when I was like 14 years old, and if I went into a coma and woke up, I would be like, what pay-per-view was on this month? And I would have used that to validate my whereabouts and the quality of the wrestling that was available at the time in the hospital. But now I'm not sure that maybe I should have to go back to calendars. I got to go back to shoot months instead of what I was doing. Has that made things a little bit clearer for you, Joe?
No, definitely. Although it's so awkward the fact that some of them don't have gimmicks.
Yeah.
That's not going to help, really.
You know what? I think, though, maybe it's not entirely without purpose that the least memorable shows have got the least memorable names.
Yeah.
You know, maybe those are going to be the months where where it's free to get a month of the network, I would reckon.
At least now I understand that things like Money in the Bank, which I always thought was just a one-off match.
It's a yearly thing.
Yeah, I thought that was like a one-off thing that maybe happened at WrestleMania or a random show. The fact that it has its own dedicated show to it, that makes things a bit easier to understand. And the Hell in a Cell thing, which is just ridiculous.
And I would definitely say if you're someone who's maybe sitting on the fence about, like, you're watching bits of wrestling here and there, but you don't know when's a good time to start watching, a real good starting point, if you want to be kind of as close as you can get to a level playing field and be on board with the same storyline, is watch the Royal Rumble. Because if you watch the Royal Rumble, then follow it through to WrestleMania, you've got, like, the scene set for the year, more or less, and you can really follow it on from there. That's the best chance that you probably will have, I would say. If you do want to watch it month to month and follow the shows and follow the weekly Raws, and you're looking for a good time, I would say the Royal Rumble, or even WrestleMania itself. You know, that's always a good one as well. So
yeah, from what I've seen, it doesn't look like Summerslam's a particularly good place to start.
No, I would say winter and summer aren't like new fan times. It's definitely a new year and a spring type of thing, I would say. But that's just my guidance, I would say, on that. That's not necessarily a rule or a definite by any stretch of the imagination. So, feeling a little bit happier about pay-per-view names?
Yeah. I don't think I'm going to get SummerSlam and Smackdown mixed up again now.
No, you're not. Hopefully. If you've already done it once, right? You do it, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me 3 times, podcast cancelled. All right? All done, finished.
I've been warned.
It'll just be me explaining things to myself, you know?
Well done, Kevin. You knew that thing.
I already know that. I already seen that wrestling.
Did you know this thing about this wrestler? Yes, I did.
Well, thanks very much for listening to this little bonus episode of How To Wrestling. And make sure you are following us on Twitter at How To Wrestling and keeping an eye out for the latest episodes where you can tweet in, let us know your thoughts and opinions on whatever the wrestler du jour is.
Yeah.
And also as well, facebook.com/How To Wrestling. Give us a like, leave us a post, a comment, send us a message, whatever you got to do. Comment threads for all previous episodes, they're all up there if you want to check out the artwork for our previous shows, or maybe even drop us a little piece of fan art. I'm going to say it right now, but not received any fan art yet, and I think now's about the time that it should start coming in, okay? Even if it is a giant plain text image of Jesus with a little stick figure Joe in the corner, I think that is necessary to happen at this point.
I want fan art of me looking like Seth Rollins, please. I'm surprised there hasn't been any, like, romantic fan art of the two of us kissing or something.
Yeah, that's a bit...
Too far?
Too far, man.
It's happened for Cinema Swirl.
Yeah, I know, right? Seriously. People obviously don't take us seriously as a couple.
We're not as good a couple.
Like,
you and Sam. And don't forget, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, find us on SoundCloud. If you enjoy our episodes, leave a rating or review. We appreciate that hugely.
Yes, all the ratings and reviews left there so far have brought tears to our hearts, and now we've had to go to a cardiac specialist as a result. Thanks a lot for that. And if you want to support How To Wrestling, give back to us, help us in the endeavours that is teaching people and fans about the world of professional wrestling, patreon.com/How To Wrestling. Become our patron and support our good works. You can pledge everything from $1 to infinite dollars. If you decide to pledge $1, you get access to Joe's show notes and all the research that goes into making an episode.
Although I've heard it exposes the business.
It does expose the business, but it exposes the podcasting business more than the wrestling business. So it's kind of, it's equal.
It's revealed that we have notes on things.
Yeah, who'd have thought, like, you know. And if you pledge $5 or more, you get access to our pay-per-view reviews, and we'll be doing one of those every single month. Last one was SummerSlam, upcoming Night of Champions, to see what Joe thinks of her favourite wrestler Seth Rollins taking on her least favourite older wrestler Sting.
Oh yeah, that's happening.
If you pledge $5, you'll get access to our exclusive review when that goes up for $5 patrons up there. $10, access to the monthly Q&A, and if you are incredibly just have to steer the ship that is How To Wrestling, $50 patrons can support and select an episode that you need us to cover in the not too distant future. Those of you wondering where the likes of How To Young Bucks has come from, it's not from me suddenly becoming incredibly in touch with the internet wrestling community. It's a fan who suggested it from a $50 patron, and I can't wait to do it.
Yeah, so it's going to be really exciting.
If you really want to support us, help us out, patreon.com/How To Wrestling, and thank you everyone who's supported so far.
We've had some really incredible requests from the $50 backers, actually. We've got some really exciting episodes coming up.
No spoilers, but it's going to get really, really, really funny really quickly.
I know so many people are going to Wait for it. Mark out. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, when they hear what has been requested.
Yeah, it's not the episode's not from someone named Mark. That's not why she said it. It was using the wrestling terminology.
Yeah.
Okay, she's using it right. Okay, it's
Yay.
correct. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of How to Wrestling. I hope you know a little bit more about the pay-per-view names, the weekly shows, and some of maybe the background of pay-per-views and why we're in a confusing situation at the moment with the network. But it's been a goodbye from me, Kevin.
And a goodbye from me, Joe.
And we'll catch you next time on How to Wrestling.
See ya.
Alright, are you okay?
Yes.
All good?
Yes.